So there's a bunch of beef going on between Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall, and it's an interesting conversation. I mean, I feel like the heavyweight division has been essentially like very dead for a long time, and I mean, because Stipe was champion for so long, and there's just not much about him that is interesting. I mean, obviously, I think we all respect his athleticism and his ability to really just take out all these monsters, essentially. Unfortunately, he never really fought the best in the division. Like, guys like, Cain Velasquez is probably the scariest UFC heavyweight of all time. And I think, honestly, at his best, he could take anybody. Like Jon Jones in his prime versus Cain Velasquez at heavyweight, I think Cain would just ragdoll him totally. He's not just gonna stay at a distance because knees are scary and oblique kicks or whatever. He would definitely run him down, take him down, and just ground and pound him and just beat him up over the course of 3-4 rounds. And again, we have Stipe here now, who he's collected a lot of heads as well. Francis Ngannou, he's the only guy to really. I mean, Ngannou has lost before, but that loss against Stipe was just so catastrophic because it was like he was completely dominated. This was this looked like a bird got caught by a fish and was now held underwater. There was nothing he could do, and that's what Stipe did. Now in the rematch, I don't know where Stipe, like, he had a moment of stupidity where he thought, oh yeah, I'm just gonna trade with Francis Ngannou. I'm gonna stand here and trade with him, and then yeah, he got caught and then goes down. People don't give Francis enough credit because he does have a chin and he's willing to take one in order to give one. And when you fight a guy like that, you really need to fight him with jabs and stuff. You need to, hit him with a couple shots and then you're immediately off the center. Because if you're just training with him in the center, you're gone. So that puts us in a strange situation because Stipe was the champion. Then Francis beat him, and then after that, Stipe never got his rematch, and then was just kind of off in firefighter land fighting all the fires. And then Jon Jones came up, and then he had the best matchup in the absolute world, which was Gain, who has no jujitsu, no wrestling ability at all. And again, we have to remember this is the heavyweight division. You'll have guys going in there who possibly only know how to box, and then they have the most rudimentary like wrestling or jujitsu. Like, they just know maybe the slightest of things, and they get in there, and these guys, because let's say they're athletic or because they're obviously strong and they're big, like, they could actually become champions. I mean, look at Brock Lesnar. He has no fighting experience. He doesn't know how to box. He doesn't know how to kickbox. He has no idea how to do any of that. He just went in there and he's big, he's athletic, he was probably pumped up, and and he had obviously his wrestling background, which was the only thing he had. And he would go in there, and if he couldn't just like rush you and hit you with a bomb or take you down and just basically just crush you, then there was nothing else he could do in that fight. But with the heavyweight division, you could become champion just with that, with, oh well, I'm athletic, or or you're athletic and you have like one martial art or something. You could get to the top. But now, I mean, we have Jon Jones. Obviously, he choked out Gain because look at what Gain did to Ngannou. I mean, Ngannou just basically went for the laziest double leg and just laid on top of him for 2 rounds, and Gain couldn't even get up or nothing, which says a lot because heavyweights should be able to just get up. They are the only people with that ability because they are that big and they are that strong. They could just give up their back and just stand up. How many times has Derek Lewis done it? I mean, it's that simple. Just get up. Don't. Who cares about technique? You are like a guy who's 6'6", 6'5", 250 pounds. Technique doesn't matter at this point. Just get up. And and so it's very frustrating because any real fan out there that has knowledge, we know that like that matchup was so bad, and everyone's just like it's like they saw a magic trick happen, and they're just like dumbfounded, like, oh my god, Jon Jones is the greatest ever. And it's like, this was just a stylistic like horrible matchup. Gane doesn't know how to wrestle. He's going up against one of the best wrestlers in the UFC, gets taken down, and then gets submitted. I mean, think about where he was too. He got taken down. He moves to the fence. Well, the problem with the fence is you're kind of crushed up against the fence, which is what Jon did to him, and then just choked him out from there. It really says that when Gane is under pressure, he just gives up so easily, right? Like I don't care how deep the choke is. You're what, like how big is he? Is he 6'5", 250, something like that? You should be able to power out of anything, But heavyweight division is just so frustrating, and especially now in the current situation where we have Jon Jones is champion, and he's walking around with his fucking chest puffed up and acting like he owns the place after getting a win over like one guy who he had a massive stylistic matchup over. And then now he's getting called out by a guy who he doesn't have a stylistic matchup advantage over. Actually, he has a disadvantage because Aspinall is a boxer. That has historically always been Jon Jones' problem, is boxing. Jon Jones is very slow if you look at him the way he moves. That's why kickboxing and Muay Thai is so great, because he'll use these moves at a distance. But when a guy gets in his face and starts throwing combinations on him, he's always eating them. Whether it was Gustafsson throwing them or if it was Reyes, that is his kryptonite essentially. And if he fought Aspinall, when he ate a combination from Aspinall, that would be it for him. He couldn't just tuck his head and try to bob and weave his way out of it. He gets one glancing shot on the temple, that's it. There's no bobbing and weaving and all this stuff, especially with how much weight he's gained, because Jon Jones is not all muscle. I don't care how much he can lift. You could clearly see that he had weight on him. It was not him at heavyweight, it's not a good look. And we could all of us, we could clearly see he's running from it. He's running from Aspinall. He doesn't want this fight. He wants to fight Stipe, and then he's gonna walk off into the sunset or whatever. And I've noticed this. I saw this on a podcast with Weidman, and he was talking to Aljamain. He was saying that it would have been much better for him to come in with a game plan of get the belt, win a couple fights, and then just walk off into the sunset. And I understand that's the best thing for the fighter, right? Because then it's like, oh, your reputation is you're undefeated, and no one can. What are they going to say to you, right? Because what can people say to Khabib? He came in, he defeated all these guys undefeated, no problems, and no one can say anything to him. But at the same time, it's like you actually want to keep fighting, but the reason why you don't is because you're trying to build some sort of legacy or whatever. And it's like, I understand that, but at the same time, for the fans, we don't really want to see guys retiring in their prime, because then if they're retiring in their prime, then we're just missing out. And yeah, you'll lose at some point, but that goes for anybody. Like Khabib, if he kept fighting even at his prime, even if we could magically keep him in his prime, he would have lost to someone at some point. There is no fighter out there that is unbeatable. Jon Jones too. I mean, he's had a lot of close fights, a lot of them. Like really, if we looked at his record negatively, you could argue that he lost the first Gustafsson fight. He obviously lost to Reyes. There's no question about that. I rewatched that. He clearly lost. There was some other fights that were kind of close. I forget, some Brazilian guy. Some people thought that guy actually won that fight. Could be. I mean, I'm not saying that there's not corruption in the UFC. I think there is some when it comes to the superstars. Those guys, all of a sudden, the world just shifts in a different way. But really, yeah, it's like we're seeing like these guys now, and they're like, oh, it's all about what's in my interest, and I'm not going to fight guys that are dangerous. But what they don't understand is, like, Jon Jones is admitting that he is scared of guys like Tom Aspinall. He knows that at heavyweight, it doesn't matter how good a fighter you are. If a guy lands, that's it. with these tiny gloves the way they are, you can't just, it's not like boxing where you see these guys and they're throwing haymakers and they're able to block them and duck them and all this stuff. You got small little gloves, and it doesn't matter how great your guard is. Like, you could do your Philly shell, but that punch is going to get through to a degree. And that's all it takes for these big dudes. They're so strong that all it takes is one shot. And that's really what we saw when Pavlovich fought against Aspinall. Pavlovich landed, hurt Aspinall, and then that's when Aspinall kind of threw back and then got Pavlovich. So it's like, it really is a heavyweight. It's really kill or be killed. You don't really see too many of these decision fights. Maybe if you got a guy who wants to wrestle, but man, think about how difficult that is to want to wrestle somebody for 5 rounds. Another big guy like that. Like, it's just those guys don't have the gas tank for that kind of thing. And Jon Jones definitely doesn't. He wants to come in. He wants to get his easy little fight against Stipe, who's super. He's got massive ring rust. He's not mentally going to be there. He just wants to get another trophy. He's pulling this Dustin Poirier thing. I'm going to come in. It's all about my legacy. It's all about me. And I'm going to just take the fights that I want, the money fights or whatever, and then I'm going to walk off into the sunset. And I get that, but at the same time, this isn't what the sport should be. We don't want the sport to turn into this. We don't want all these guys are focusing on their legacy and they don't want to fight hard fights because, well, I might lose, and then there goes my undefeated status, which will hurt my legacy. Like, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be a good thing for the sport if everyone's sitting there only taking the easy fights, only fighting cans. The whole Sean O'Malley thing. Only fighting cans, only cherry picking matchups they know they can win. That's something that Mayweather did. Making sure you're always fighting guys at their least best. All this stuff, it just makes things really scummy, makes it really bad. I mean, I would much rather have someone who has a record of like 10-5, but the real fans know that each one of those losses was really close and he was fighting guys in their prime, as opposed to waiting until they were out of their prime, or just fighting them when they're not their best. Like, I imagine having a record where you have, like, let's say someone did defeat Khabib or whatever, but then because of that they ended up getting a couple losses from some other people. I mean, I think we should be focusing on, like, what are your trophies, as opposed to, well, you're 15-1 or you're 15-3 or something. Oh, you've been defeated, therefore you've been conquered, and therefore you can't be the GOAT, right? Because the GOAT means you're undefeated, and we're playing these legacy games about who's the best and all this stuff. And it's like, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's cool at all. I really don't. I think it's turning a lot of these fighters into these big old babies, just sitting there worried about what people are saying about them. And like, oh, well, I need to be undefeated, otherwise people are going to make fun of me. It's like, it's not going to be good for the sport. It's not going to be good. If Jon Jones wants to be considered one of the best in the world, he's going to have to, okay, if he beats Stipe, whatever. If Stipe were to beat him, that would be hilarious, honestly. That's what I want. But let's say he does what everyone thinks. He goes in, he beats Stipe, and then I think if he should do one more fight against the current champion, which would probably be Tom Aspinall, and if he could defeat Tom Aspinall, then he could walk off in the sunset, and he has a stronger argument to call himself the GOAT. Because if he doesn't, then people are going to say, oh, he was scared. He was scared. I mean, a lot of people say that about Khabib too, right? Because when Khabib left, there was still a lot of contenders. There were still a lot of people that were gunning for him. And he made, I'll walk in, I'll beat a couple guys, and then I'll get out of here. Especially when he had the stylistic matchups on almost all of them. It wasn't really impressive if you're not a casual, then you would understand, like, oh yeah, he wasn't really that good. But if you're a casual and you're like, oh well, look what he did and all this stuff, and A lot of casuals out there, and usually most of the biggest champions have all the casuals. The Khabib fans, massive casuals. Jon Jones fans, massive casuals. And you know, just one little thing. It's funny how I'll see a lot of people and they'll shit on T.J. Dillashaw for being a cheater, but those same people are going around calling Jon Jones the GOAT. It's absolutely bizarre. It really, really is. And I don't know. How can you be a casual? You know, it's like once you like this stuff, why not get involved in like all of it? You know, watch all the cards. You know, get involved in stuff. You know, who is this guy? Let me look at his record. Let's look up some fights. Literally, there's so many free fights out there, and people can't even watch them. It really is bizarre for someone to think they know. Oh, I know all of this, and yet they're giving you the most casual takes. Absolutely bizarre. All right, guys. I'll see you on the next one.